Space, the final frontier. Space, the final frontier. Hello, this is Mr. Hornsby83. This is Mr. Hornsby83 show, and I am dealing with the frickin' sinus cold today, so my voice sounds kind of raspy and hoarse. Sound like frickin' Brian Pillman or whatever, but I figure I get this video out. Today I'm going to be talking about the Star Trek shows, the Star Trek movies, and a few other things. But, first off, I got to sell out because, that's what everybody on YouTube does. They got to sell out. So, this video is sponsored by Pepsi Zero. It's not really sponsored by Pepsi Zero, but hey, gotta get that fake ad in. Excuse me. So anyway, we're gonna talk about Star Trek. Not Trek. It's not track, it's Trek. Gonna talk about Star Trek. Gonna start with the 66 show, which, I really didn't get to see the 66 show until, it came out. I think, MeTV or frickin' BBC or something was frickin' airing the original show, and I watched it. It was a pretty good show. It's a shame the show got canceled, but then again, they got, 5, 6 movies out of it. With Captain James T. Kirk and Mr. Spock and Bones and Chekhov and Sulu, and I can't remember the lady's name. But, I don't know. She was the Deanna Troy of that show. So. And honestly, I think that show was ahead of its time. It's probably why people didn't watch it originally. Now, they got all the freaking Star Trek movies, which was supposed to, what was it? When the show started, they're we're going to go on a 5-year voyage or whatever, and they only got 3 seasons. So they went on a 5-year voyage in 5 or 6 different movies. I think the first one was the worst movie out of all of them. Then we had 2, which was Wrath of Khan. Then we had 3, which they revived Spock in. Then we had 4, which can't remember what that one was about. Was that the one where Worf showed up in it? I don't know. They had 5, and then you had 6, But Star Trek has been a big, part of pop culture ever since it started in the 60s. All the way up to now, they got this current show. I don't know. I don't watch that show. Well, I gotta talk about the main 4 shows that I watched when I was growing up, or I watched bits and pieces of, or, whatever. But the show was about space exploration. Can't talk right. Maybe it's just cold. I can't even go to the gym today, so I'm hoping to go tomorrow because I don't want to miss no more days. I have plans to go today, and then I got this stupid cold Saturday. It was frickin' Friday evening. Anyway, space exploration. Exploitation. I don't know. I can't talk right now with that. I gotta say, the show I liked the best was frickin' Star Trek The Next Generation, which I'll talk about now, or I'll talk about in a minute. But, the original show set up a lot of things. It set up the Klingons, it set up the Romulans and all that, which were all characters that became a big part of later shows, and probably still to this day. The Klingons were the bad guys, though, in the first show. Which is why it's weird that, Kirk hated Klingons, but then he liked Worf in whatever movie that was that Worf was in. He's like, Worf, you're the only Klingon I like. No. But, I like the character, but I don't know. But, yeah. Can't think straight. And it's freaking cold. Anyway. Oh well. Yeah, it's also, yeah, I'll just go on Next Generation. So Star Trek Next Generation kind of established characters like Q and the freaking Borg and all that stuff, and I like the Romulans as well. I don't know, because I could have sworn, I don't know, the Romulans are, no, the Cardassians. Yeah, the Cardassians got established. In Star Trek Next Generation, you had Captain Picard, you had Riker, you had Data, you had Troy, you had Beverly Crusher, Wesley Crusher, Captain O'Brien, or Chief O'Brien was a captain, he was Chief. Chief O'Brien, Tasha Yard until they kill her off. But, this shows, I could have swore, I will say this, I could have swore, because my friend Jean's mom was a big Star Trek fan. She was also a big Star Wars fan, but I could have swore that she watched a Star Trek movie or something, that had Picard teaming up with the frickin' Kirk crew. But I don't know. I know in Generations they do the crossover movie with Star Trek Next Generation and the original show. But Picard was in another Star Trek movie, I could have swore, that had Kirk. Maybe it was just a movie with Patrick Stewart and freaking William Shatner in it, and I mistaked it for a Star Trek movie. I don't know. But I guess swore it had like the Star Trek characters in it. I just can't remember, but And if Jean's mom was still around, I'd ask her. But she's no longer around. She passed like a couple years before my mom did. In the same month, too. Like a week apart. She was in 2015. My mom passed in 2015. But, anyway, one of my big issues, because it's the original Star Trek show, Captain Kirk was a ladies' man. And then in Star Trek Next Generation, it seemed like, even though they had Riker, who was supposed to be the somewhat ladies' man, but they had frickin' Riker, but yet they kept shoehorning in all these frickin' love interests for Picard, whether it was in the TV show, whether it was in the movie or whatever. And I'm like, well, why are we putting all these love interests in for Picard when, it's quite clear, I think one of the final seasons, it's revealed that Picard, which you kind of realized when you first watched the show anyway, that Picard had feelings for frickin' Beverly Crusher. But, problem was, Picard didn't want to, put the moves on her, because she got with someone that was, I guess, one of his best friends, but that he dies, so, she ends up on Picard's ship. And there was a point there for a while where they frickin' took Kate McFadden off and Beverly Crusher off, and they had that one frickin' doctor who totally sucked. I did not like that frickin' other lady doctor that they brought in that replaced Crusher. I'm like, why are we taking Crusher out? Why can't, I think it might have been a dispute with with the people that created the show or whatever. But why are we taking Crusher out and putting this lady in, who apparently knew Riker's father was also a lady. We're like, why don't they just make Riker's father? Wasn't there a freaking Star Trek movie with like Kirk's son in it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, or somebody showed up in the show. I can't remember. Been a while since I watched that. But why did they not, have Kirk be frickin' Riker's father or something like that? I guess they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to, they didn't want to have the, they didn't want to have a tie-in between the two shows, even though they did some crossovers. Because, like, we saw Scotty show up on frickin' Next Generation. We saw Spock show up. Kirk was in Star Trek Generations, the movie. The first Next Generation movie. What else? Let's see. Yeah. One interesting thing about Star Trek shows has always been the characters like Geordi LaForge or Spock or, Scotty, everybody makes that joke on every TV show you see in pop culture right now. Beam me up, Scotty. Why I kind of sound like Sean Connery when I said that. But, I don't know what the deal was with But, yeah. Beat me up, Scotty. Which a lot of people use that catchphrase in pop culture. Probably one of the most famous lines from the original show is, beat me up, Scotty. And, the fact that everybody makes fun of Shatner because he, seemed like he was reading off the script while he was while he was acting on TV, so, yeah. That's why I started out with, the one thing. But yeah, I mean, another thing too, a lot of the characters in Next Generation seem like they had a bunch of, like Data, the robot who has no emotions, but, got some from Tasha Yarn and frickin', and it ended up frickin' having feelings for her, and then she ends up dying and all that stuff, That's crazy. So yeah. Yeah, maybe I should have thought this video out a little bit more. Anyway. They also have Beverly have a bunch of different love interests as well throughout the show and the movies, like that one parasite guy who was a normal person, and somehow he had to attach to frickin' Riker for a bit until he frickin' got his new host body or whatever. And then, was that Dax? I don't know. Was that Dax? Because, I know in Deep Space Nine there's a character called Dax, which is like one of the main characters. But, yeah. Yeah, there's also this one episode where she's like falling in love with this story created character that her grandma I guess made up. It was in her grandma's journal or whatever. And in the end she's all sad about it. Then Picard comes up and says, I'm sorry, Beverly, if there's anything you need, you can come talk to me. Yeah. Yeah, what Picard wanted to do, he wanted to explore Beverly Crusher's ovaries. Fuck. I hate being sick. Anyway, let's get to the movies, because in the first movie we have Malcolm McDowell as the villain. Well, the first Next Generation movie. Then I'll talk about Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and then I'll talk about some of my favorite characters from the show. And all that. But first movie, Malcolm McDowell was like this villain. And he was like trying to get back to this Nexus thing, which is this the one to have Kirk. And it starts out, it's like, well, they didn't get all of the freaking original Star Trek characters back. They had Sulu's daughter. Bones wasn't there. Jerkoff was there. Or whatever his name is. Jakeoff. I don't know. Jerk off. I'll just call him Jerk off. And Scotty was there, but there was no Spock, no Bones. I think the one lady was there, and like in the movie, like it starts in the original show's timeline, and like now Kirk's an Admiral, and you know he's taking a look at the new USS Enterprise, and the freaking captain seems incompetent. Which a lot of those freaking characters they used at the beginning of that movie ended up being on later shows. Like one guy who was there, he ended up becoming Tuvok at Voyager. Then another character, he became a villain in Deep Space Nine. Yeah, then he freaking did. Yeah, they had a couple people that ended up being in different shows. So, you know, then they pan into the future after Kirk supposedly died. And it's like the new Star Trek Next Generation crew, and Picard's all upset about his nephew dying, which we only see in one freaking episode of, like, a two-parter, in one freaking episode of Next Generation, and he's like, well, that was the closest chance I had to have something. But then, you know, I don't know what the movies are based after. They're based after the end of the show. After they went on trial with frickin' Q and all that. But, like, wasn't there a thing where there was, like, this guy that this frickin', what are those things called? Ferengi. Where Ferengi kind of tried to make Picard think he had a son, and he was going to try to kill Picard's son. Even though it turned out not to be Picard, but it seemed like Picard kind of built a relationship with him. What happened with that guy? You know, why don't you just do a father figure thing with him? Because he never really knew his father, because, I don't know. I forgot what the reasoning was, why, you know, but, I don't know. Wesley Crusher, I mean, he was a son to you. Hey, that would have probably helped you out with Beverly a little bit more. Anyway. Let's see. Shoot. Oh, it was also funny, too, how they had Worf hook up with Deanna Troi over an episode where Worf's going through, like, different time frames in his life or something. And, like, it shows there's a possible future where him and Deanna Troi get together. Boy, Deanna Troi was a trifling one, wasn't she? She went with Riker. She went with Worf. I don't know. Barclay wanted some of her. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway, she ended up with Riker at the end. They got married in the last Star Trek movie, which was Insurrection. But I don't know. But yeah, when was the freaking movie, the first movie based after? Was it based after the freaking Next Generation end of the show or what? I don't know. It had to have been after the show because when they when they brought Worf in on Deep Space Nine, Worf was you know, Captain Sisko said, "Oh, sorry about your USS Enterprise crashing." And I think that was like season 2 of Deep Space Nine. So yeah, Deanna Troi, she was trifling. I know, was the lady in the original show? I don't know. I didn't get to see every single episode. I think she was like with Scotty or something. I don't know. Maybe she was with Spock, and she was with Scotty, and maybe even Kirk. I don't know. There is that, what? Star Trek 4 or 5? She's freaking naked dancing to trick Spock's half-brother. Or trick Spock's half-brother's goons or whatever. Let's see. But yeah. Alright, let's talk about... You know what, I'll talk about Deep Space Nine and that in a minute. But let's talk about the storylines of the originals. Now, the first one, it was supposed to be a 5-year journey where they were exploring space. But it only had 3 seasons, but they had like 5 or 6 movies. The Next Generation, I think the story was, you know, apparently they were called the too many time riffles. So frickin' Q had to put him on trial. Like, first frickin' episode of the Next Generation show, they're on trial with Q, but then Picard, like, gets him to back off, but then you see Q pop up. Hey, and I hate the fact that the main villain ended up being Q. It's kind of like how, with the old show, the Klingons were kind of the villain. And then, like, all of a sudden now Kirk likes Worf and all that stuff, he gives Worf a hug and everything. But yeah. Star Trek Deep Space Nine storyline was the Dominion trying to take over, which I think, as far as the best freaking storyline, I'd probably say the freaking Deep Space Nine had the best storyline out of all the freaking Star Trek shows. And like I said, I haven't watched any of the newer ones. I haven't even watched Picard yet. I'm a big fan of Picard. And I liked Star Trek The Next Generation. But, yeah, you have, it starts out with Sisko seeing frickin' Picard when he was taken over by the Borg as Locutus, and, they're going to kill everybody and they're going to destroy some starship that, Sisko's on, but Sisko frickin' everybody's evacuating. He's trying to get his wife, he gets his son, and then the thing blows up and he's upset, and then, oddly enough, it's frickin' Picard who goes and talks to Sisko and why he wanted Sisko to be the captain of Deep Space Nine because, he wants to get that deal with Bajor going and all that stuff, and, and it's off to the races. Then you have the Dominion, which was mainly the Cardassians, the Breen, and one other faction too. I think the Borg was a part of it for a bit. I don't know. But, we'll say in a Generation movie, they do kill off the Duras sisters, which was one of the interesting characters of the frickin' show. I guess the one that was pregnant in that episode where Worf's son comes from the future, Alexander comes from the future, and tries to kill the young version of himself because the older version of himself let Worf die somehow. I'm like, I don't think Worf would ever die. I mean, not only did he kill frickin' two members of the High Council, two top guys, he killed Duras, then he killed Gowron. He also brought them back frickin', Kahless. He brought Kahless back to the Klingon Empire. He frickin' got Martok in as the new ruler of the frickin' Klingon High Council or whatever. So yeah, I'm like, how could Worf die? But anyway, yeah, I think Deep Space Nine storyline is just like one of the best storylines in the frickin' show. Out of all the shows. And I like Next Generation, but really the storyline was they were frickin' underwatched by Q, and Q would pop up in different seasons and like different episodes of that. It's like most of the time when they would have Q come in, it was kind of like a comedy character. Except for that first episode, and then I guess you could say the final two episodes. He was more like a comedy character any other time you frickin' seen him in the frickin' show. Same thing happened when he was in Voyager a couple times. I think he even showed up in Deep Space Nine. I didn't get to catch that episode. But, BBC ran all the Star Trek shows that came out in the, from the 60s to the Next Generation to the ones that came out in the 90s, which was, Deep Space Nine and Voyager came out a couple years after that. But, I don't know. I'm like, well, why don't they just have the Borg be the main villain? Because, it's like Picard had the issue with the Borg. And in Star Trek First Contact, you see that he freaking hates the Borg. And they encountered the Borg like numerous times throughout the show's run. Why didn't the Borg be the main villains? They waited until Voyager, the end of that, to take out the Borg, I guess. But, And with Voyager's storyline, it's like, yeah, they're not even on the Enterprise. They're on a different ship, which is Voyager. Just like with Deep Space Nine, it's like a space station that's hovering around Bajor. But I do like how the villain was pretty much revealed at the beginning of the show and then was the main villain at the end. Because after they freaking defeat the Dominion, the head guy of the Cardassians, who was the head guy, comes back, and him and Cisco have to fight to the death. He kills him, but then Cisco has to like do something to go to a higher power or something, because they were like, storyline was like, you know, Cisco some kind of prophecy thing or something. So yeah, and you know, the Next Generation, it was freaking Q put Picard on freaking trial. Yeah, Voyager, it was like, I don't know what they were doing with Voyager. Pretty much exploring. But, yeah, that's what all the shows were about, mainly was exploring. But I think Deep Space Nine, yeah, best storyline. Now let's talk about the best characters of, who are my favorite characters, who do I think are the best characters in those shows. Well, of course, I'm a fan of Next Generation, so this might be a little biased, but I like the Next Generation crew. They got a lot more development. You know, some of the old show characters got some development, like Spock and, you know, all that stuff, but, you know, not as much development as the characters from Next Generation. But then again, Next Generation got to get, what, like 7 seasons or so? It started in 87 and ended in 94. Might have been 5 seasons? Oh, wait a minute, yeah, because Ninja Turtles started in 87, the original cartoon. They had 10 seasons, because it ended in 96. So, yeah, I guess it was 7 seasons. So Next Generation had 7 seasons, while the original show only had 3 seasons, but you had the movies. And I think some of the characters in the movies got some, you know, some time to shine, like Jackoff and Bones and Sulu and all that stuff. But they still weren't developed as much as I think the Next Generation characters were. But then I will go to the original show's crew. I think they were the second best crew. Then third, I'll go with Voyager's crew. Not just because of 7 to 9 either. Their crew was pretty interesting. You had Tuvok, you had, you know, a couple other characters get their shine. The Coach A, 7 of 9, all them. But yeah, Deep Space Nine's characters I really didn't care for too much. I didn't like Quark. I did like Captain Sisko. I think he was awesome. He was awesome. He was great. But the rest of the supporting cast outside of Dax, and really didn't have too much development either. Like, you had the Bajor lady, you had Quark, which I didn't care for Quark. You didn't have Worf in this show, so of course I'm going to like Worf. O'Brien, I thought, got some good shine in this. But, like, some of the other characters, like, I'd say Dax. Like, I didn't like Julian. I didn't like when Dax got changed to a different person because that version died or whatever. I think the brain killed her. It might have been the Cardassians. I don't know. I didn't like the frickin' Oracle lady. Yeah, she wasn't like frickin' Guided in Next Generation. I didn't like Odo too much either. I mean, he was kind of lame. And the freaking main villain, who was the head of Dominion, was like, she was lame. That's why I say the main villain that was leading the Cardassians, that guy was cool. That guy was a good villain. Yeah, you know, Cisco beats him and all that stuff, but yeah, I don't know. Because all that lady had to do was like, Odo did something where their liquid forms, I don't know. It was just kind of a dumb. ending, except for the battle between Cisco and the head of the Cardassians. But, I don't know. I don't know, this video will probably be one of my worst videos. One, because I'm sick of two. I had some other things I had thought about that I was going to talk about with these shows, but because my brain's so freaking messed up today from this cold, I'm hoping by Wednesday I'll feel fine. Tomorrow I'm also going to have my figure build. But, yeah. And then, Friday I'll be doing a playthrough of Jurassic Park for Sega. And then, the next week I'll be talking about that Dragon Ball event because it's supposed to happen next week. So I'll talk about that. And I'll think of something else. But anyway, I'm eventually going to watch Picard. I might watch it after I'm done with this video. I think it ties up loose ends from the other shows, like Deep Space Nine and that, because I think 7 and 9's in the show. I don't know, but... I know a lot of people said Picard was a terrible show. But, that's their opinion. Anyway, yeah. I just wanted to talk, I don't know, I just felt like doing a video about Star Trek. I really didn't have nothing else to do, so. Couldn't think of nothing else, so I'm like, you know what, I'll just do a Star Trek video, talk about all the freaking original shows. The 4 original shows, not the newer ones like Lower Deck or, all that, because I haven't watched those. I like the ones that came out from the 60s into the 80s, and then, with the 90s ones. I know they also came out with, what was it, Enterprise, which was like, I think after Deep Space, or no, not after Deep Space Nine, it was after Voyager, I think, or it was going on at the same time as Voyager. But I never watched Enterprise. I watched the other shows because, BBC threw them all on there. And that, I don't know. But anyway. That'll do it. Hopefully I feel better tomorrow and Wednesday. What I gotta do is like voice overs for frickin' wrestling figures. But anyway. See you guys tomorrow for the figure Rumble build. And something I didn't realize is that the Royal Rumble's gonna be the 31st. So my freaking figure event will be the night before the Royal Rumble. Interesting. Alright. Catch you guys later. Peace out. I know I said I wasn't gonna say that anymore, but I will. Not feeling well.